Hello. If you can see pain etched on my face, it is because I have just sat down and watched 2019's Terminator Dark Fate, which I was going to do a review of. However, I've decided instead to do one of those ranking movies. It's 2016 again. Yes, it's a ranking video for all the Terminator films. We'll start with 1984's Terminator. It is one of my all-time favourite movies, like top 2 or 3 of the films that I have seen in my entire life. Terminator is just a wonderful film. It knows when to just slow down the pace a bit, but generally is pretty frantic throughout. It is a really excellent film. It was also a smash hit, making $78 million worldwide, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was 1984, and they only spent $6 million making it. A sequel was inevitable. However, Terminator, one of the greatest films I've ever seen, is easily in the top tier. 7 years later, along comes Terminator 2, Judgment Day, which is also a really excellent film. And I saw this at the cinema when it came out and was blown away by just how amazing all the things were and the effects. And I really liked the sort of more, I guess, humorous side that they tried to add to the Terminator. However, when I look back as an older man, I do think that that was a bit of a mistake. And some of that stuff with John Connor, who's just the right side of annoying and fairly effective when he's with his young friend on screen. But a little bit of that hasta la vista baby stuff, perhaps perhaps that was a bad idea. If you think about the conversations that Schwarzenegger and Cameron had about the Terminator in the first film, here they have sort of gone back on quite a lot of that, and I'm not sure that it's completely effective. But for me, the worst part of the entire film is this bit where the Terminator walks up to the thing with the minigun and the grenade. It's like, I'm going to get rid of all the police. And then what he proceeds to do over a couple of minutes is waste an enormous amount of ammunition, because as soon as his back is turned, the police are shooting him in the back. So nothing he did there made any difference or made any sense. And that is just a little bit starting to creep into the series already in the second film. Just that little bit of, what sense does this make? Whereas in the initial film, I don't really think that there was any moment that was like that stands out as being just kind of pointless or for show. However, Terminator 2, with an amazing performance from Robert Patrick, really is a scary dude. I still really like the film. I'm surprised that it's so much higher than Terminator 1 on IMDb. It's like 8.6 compared to 8.1. I would have thought they'd have been very close in the same sort of ballpark. But it just goes to show that a lot of people are distracted by the shiny things. Like the more, there's more things blowing up, there's more things flashing around on screen, so therefore it must be better, right? No. Terminator 1 is better than Terminator 2. Terminator 2 still goes in the top tier because it's still a really excellent film, but it isn't quite as good as the first one. Now, the third film in the series, you can see that it takes the next step in the silliness of the Terminator from the previous film, with the talk to the hand and he's wearing glasses that are in the shape of a star, and it's just no. Just no. Listen again, Arnold Schwarzenegger, to what you said in your conversations with James Cameron about the other one, about how it's like a deathly serious and must be taken serious at all time. And you really, really dropped the ball with this film. Additionally, why would you send this Terminator to kill John Connor when it's clearly a less effective Terminator than the second one? Why not just send another one of those? Or, if we're going to send, the initial one was they sent one, but now it's like we can send half a dozen, 10, 15, 20, why not? So they could have done other things with the Terminator. They could have sent 2 Terminators. You also see the IMDb score here dropping, but I'm surprised it's as high as it is at 6.3, because this film is pretty bad. And they really could have done a lot of other things with it. They could have had like this idea, like Sarah Connor is preparing like an underground of people, a network of people, or she did, because she's not in it because Linda Hamilton refused to be in it. So there could almost be like that sort of turning into a death cult, which almost brings about the collapse, by ushering in Judgment Day. So they could have done other things with it, but they really did nothing with it apart from repeat the formula, only stupider and for children. Some of the action set pieces are all right, and I actually don't mind the ending. there's a fan edit of this film which cuts out the silliness and just moves it on a little bit quicker, and it's a much better film for it, but it's still a pale imitation of what's come before. So I'm giving this one in its current form a D. The fan edit I would give a C, but I'm ranking the official ones here, so D. They followed that up with what should have been Terminator 3 if they were going to make another one, which is tell the story of Kyle Reese, or tell the story set in that John Connor, Kyle Reese future that we saw glimpses of in the first one. Because there's real potential here for a great film, or perhaps even a series of films in this part of the Terminator timeline. But I don't think they did a very good job of it. I really don't. Again, there's a fan edit of this that's better than the cinema version because it cuts out some of the bloat and drivel. Generally, this is not that bad a film, and it's just not what it should have been. So I'm going to give it a C. Oh, good for you. And yes, that Christian Bale rant was the best thing that ever came out of the film. It's a shame, really, that there wasn't that much fire and passion in the actual screenplay. About 10 years later, we were treated to the joys of Terminator Genisys, a film by now they'd cut the budget. By now they're gone, we're spending too much money on these Terminator films. They're not returning enough. So we're cutting the budget, which is interesting because they actually made, allowing for inflation a bit, they actually made more money on Terminator Genisys than they did Salvation. And it was cheaper to make, so they actually saw a better return on investment, even though it's considered a flop. But in truth, it's not so much a commercial flop. It made nearly 3 times its budget. It's a critical and artistic disaster. This is one of the stupidest, worst thought out and abysmally made films that I have ever seen. Not just in this series, but in all series. It is shockingly poor. Why would you get... Well, I know why they got Emilia Clarke, because she was riding high off being the mother of dragons in Game of Thrones. Why not get a project for her? But this project... She's about 5'1". For all the butt kicking that went on in Game of Thrones, she was never really throwing punches and kicking balls or anything like that, was she? She was more force of personality. And in that regard, they could have made a role for her that was like that. But instead, they tried to make her like an action hero, which was... And then the messing around with the timeline, and then John Connor's like a Terminator, but he's also the bad guy, and it's horrible. Really, really, really horrible. Every part of this story is stupid. It's really badly acted from most of the cast. I mean, Jai Courtney's never good in anything. So why have they done this? Did they not look at the script and go, that's not going to work. People are not going to like that. Just awful. It's going straight in the toilet, where it belongs. And the final film, which I've watched today, is Terminator Dark Fate. And we say final film because we hope and we pray that this franchise is officially now dead. What's interesting here is that they looked at their return on the previous film, and they looked at what people said about it and how bad the word of mouth was about it, and they thought, you know what? We should spend more money on this franchise. What they should have done is gone, spent 155 million on the last one. We made 440, about the same. So if that means in real terms allowing for 4 years or 3 years between the two films that we're actually cutting the budget, so much the better. But they actually spent 30 million more, which is a problem because it made about 200 million less and did not quite do the double its budget thing that a lot of people say is necessary for a break even. But this film is laugh out loud bad in places, really, really bad in places. But it also has some bits that aren't terrible. The action scene in the factory right at the start would be good if it had been earned by that point, but it hasn't been. So they just sort of have this in there. You look at the beginning of the Terminator film and the action scene. There's not a big chase. There's not a big fight. There's not a big set piece. There's just trying to work out who people are while building up Sarah Connor as somebody that we should care about. But in this one, we've got Danny, and there's no reason to care about her at all. And she's not involved in that fight at all. So you've got two people that you've basically seen fall out of the sky fighting each other, and yet, why do I care about any of this? And it kind of goes on from there, really. There's bits of it that are painful, really, really bad. Like everything with Arnold Schwarzenegger in this film is disastrous, and he's like talking about drapes and things, and it's clear that they've learned absolutely nothing from Terminator 3, absolutely nothing, that he's like a clown character, but he's only really there to fight the other one at the end and make yet another heroic sacrifice. How many heroic sacrifices does the Terminator make before you just go, you're coming off a factory line. You're not a thing that we need to be worried about. My car doesn't make a heroic sacrifice when it breaks down. It just breaks down. The joke of the film is the lead actress, Natalia Reyes, who plays Danny Ramos. And at times, she's quite good. When she's playing the daughter in a family, she's not awful. When she's playing I'm running away and I'm scared, she's not awful. But when she's like, oh, I'm supposed to pick up this gun that's bigger than me and makes me look ridiculous, and then I'm supposed to be like the martial arts expert at the end and sort of standing there like I'm the... Just awful, just not up to the job. There must be countless... So if you were determined to have that Latin lead, that try and tap that Latin audience, there must be countless butt-kicking Latin girls out there that could have played that role, and that's what you did. Like, she's 5'0", and then there's the scene, Linda Hamilton's like, oh, you're just wanted for your womb, you're just the mother of the man that's going to usher in the new resistance. And you played this card in Terminator 3. People remember that it turns out to have been not John Connor that sent the Terminator back for Terminator 3, but Claire Danes' character that was like his lieutenant in the resistance that sent it back. You've played this card. You can't play it again and again. It's boring. And nobody in their right mind was watching that going, oh, I bet it's because she's the mother of the resistance fighter. No, we all knew exactly what it was. So the big reveal with this supposedly epic moment with this musical swelling like it's just a giant moment. It's like, no, this is trash. And it's embarrassing because she can't play that role. Did you not screen test her? Did you not go, right, we can see you can do the little girl parts, great. The young woman parts, great. Let's see you do the military leader part and see how you do it that. And then they would have gone, what's Genisys Rodriguez doing? Shall we try? Just anything. It's quite interesting because what you actually see in this series, a Judgment Day of a kind, is inevitable. That John Connor was killed, but a resistance leader arising from his corpse, if you like, is inevitable. What you're actually saying is that it doesn't matter if Danny lives or dies either, because somebody else will take their place. And we had that sort of hinted at in Terminator 3 when they were killing the lieutenants. It's like, that's because if John Connor is dead, somebody else is going to take his place. So it really doesn't matter what happens in any of these films. They completely broke the series. However, all in all, I would probably say that Dark Fate, while it's a poor movie and I was laughing out loud at how bad it was and never laughing with it when it was trying to be funny, I was just like, oh, make this stop. It is better than Genisys. So I'm giving it an F. It's still a fail, but it's not the worst fail of the series. It's just a really bad film. And it's an insult in a lot of ways to what has gone before. However, it's nothing close to the sort of insult that Genisys was. What surprises me is the amount of people that went to see this, because something has to be done to stop this sort of thing. You walk into an art gallery and try to ruin a painting for your political purposes, then people would not be happy with you. People would try to stop you and people would arrest you for doing it. However, it's okay to make a film that is deliberately ruining what came before, insulting what came before. People queue up round the block for that, apparently, to a box office return of $440 million, nearly 3 times the budget. What is a shockingly poor film and a shockingly deliberate vandalism of the first two. So I did watch Sarah Connor Chronicles, not when it came out. I watched it a few years later on like E4 or whatever it was on over here. I can't really remember anymore. It was a long time ago. And I didn't mind it. I mean, the biggest issue I have with it is that if you're casting Sarah Connor, then you have to have Linda Hamilton. And if you don't have Linda Hamilton, I'm kind of like, I don't want to see a pale imitation. I don't want to see Emilia Clarke as Sarah Connor. That's just a joke. It's either Linda Hamilton or nothing. So you could have gone, what's Linda Hamilton doing? Does she want to do all of the series? Does she want to do a couple of episodes of the series? Because you could just as easily have called it the John Connor Chronicles and have it set when Sarah Connor is locked up and just have a sort of a couple of series, a couple of episodes rather, where she appears if she doesn't want to do the whole thing. You could quite easily have just called it the John Connor Chronicles. I think people would have still known what it was. And it wasn't like calling it the Sarah Connor Chronicles was adding millions and millions of viewers to it, because it was always that series that was on the verge of cancellation. It is pretty mediocre television, if we're honest. And it's not terrible, and like Lena Headey is quite good, and Summer Glau is always good value, so it has things going for it, but it is cheap, pale, weak imitation of Terminator. However, when you sort of go, where would it place in the series of films? Well, the third one was a farce. The fourth one was pretty average. If we're ranking it in the same sort of ballpark, I enjoyed it about as much as I enjoyed Salvation. It's not quite as good. So I'll put it between Salvation and Rise of the Machines. Do yourself a favour and check out of this series at 4 and skip 3. So 1, 2 and 4 and done. But really the series should have ended at 1. There was no mention in the other one of like, oh yeah, actually, this Terminator, there's going to be hundreds of them. You should probably prepare yourself for that. Like Michael Biehn didn't sit Sarah Connor down and go, look, the future's going to pan out like this for you. It's going to be pretty grim, because after this one, there's another one. And then after that one, guess what? Another one. And guess what? Another one. Then there'll be a whole series of them. And then you'll think that you've won, but guess what? Another one. And guess what happens even if you do win? It doesn't matter. It'll all happen anyway. She might well have gone, I'm going to start a death cult. Or she might well have gone, where's that shotgun? Anyway, thanks for watching. By all means, leave your rankings in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
My name is Riley and I'm a student. The first 2 weeks at Sexington University were perfectly normal. I was drunk until the end of freshers when my student loan ran out. Then Professor Lovecraft exploded his lab and my eyebrows and everything changed. My roommate started dying. Aliens invaded. I killed a dragon over breakfast, got stranded in the past and attacked by dinosaurs. I might have committed a genocide. I might have robbed an empire. I may even have saved the world. I really hope next week is quieter. I have an assignment due.